In this Blender tutorial, we're going to bake a normal map from a high-res 3D scan of a shirt to a low-poly retopologized mesh of the shirt. Earlier, we used retopology tools in Blender to make a low-poly mesh. If I tab into edit mode, you can see this is a very low-poly mesh, yet it has all the texture detail from the high-poly mesh. The problem with this is if I go into viewport shading, we can see that it is still very low poly, even with a subdivision surface. It's just going to lose some of that detail and texture. We can bring back the detail and texture as seen in the 3D shirt scan. Here, looking at the 3D shirt scan, it has all this great texture from the scan, but we don't want all these polygons to go into our cloth sim. So we can bake all this as a normal map onto our low poly mesh. In order to do that, we need to create a normal map image texture. This is very similar to baking the diffuse texture. So if you haven't seen that video, go see the link in the description. I can click this diffuse texture, press Shift D. This makes a new image texture. I can delete the node. So now there's nothing here. Make a new image and call this shirt bake normal map. And then once again, make this 4096, 4096. You can always make these lower res later, but when you're baking your textures, you might as well have a decent resolution. Click New Image. Now I need to bake the normal map from the actual complex high poly mesh of the 3D scan shirt to the low poly mesh. To bake normal maps in Blender, we use the same technique as diffuse textures. I'll tab into Object Mode. I need to select the high poly mesh. So I have the high poly mesh shirt 3D scan selected here. Then in Blender, you hold Control and select the low poly mesh. Then it's very important to make sure you click the new normal map image texture. It should look black over here. Go to the Render tab, make sure you're in Cycles, then scroll down to Bake. Instead of Bake Type Diffuse, we'll select Bake Type Normal. Once again, we'll use the cage and we'll make sure Selected to Active is clicked. It's always a good idea to save this because if you have the wrong image texture selected, you'll overwrite the information. Once that's all prepared, click Bake. This should bake very quickly, and you can see now that it has a normal map baked right onto this image. If you want to see how that works on the actual mesh, click into the shader nodes, press Shift A, search for normal map, bring the color from the normal map into this normal map, and then the normal into the normal of the shader. In addition, we want to make sure that the color space for this is not sRGB, but we can't change that until we actually save the image. So come over here, click Image, Save, make sure it's saved, and then we can change the color space to non-color. Now, if I turn off the 3D scan and I select Material Preview, but here I can't see it because of all the texture from the diffuse, but all I have to do is pull this off, and you'll see now I have all that texture from the normal map on my low poly mesh. So it sure looks like the high poly mesh, but this is actually the low poly mesh, because if I take off the normal map by changing the strength, so if I bring the strength down to 0, you can see it's just a low poly mesh. But if I bring the strength to 1, suddenly I have all that information. One thing you can do is fix these extreme normal situations here. Notice how it has all this green. That's because we sculpted the collar to where we wanted it, and it may not line up perfectly. We also have this error on the sleeve. You can easily just image adjust that in Photoshop so it's the same color palette as the purple, and it won't stick out so bad. Hopefully this allows you to bake normal maps from high poly meshes to low poly meshes in Blender. Happy 3D modeling!